You've been buying mulch bags, spreading them, watching them disappear into the soil, and then going back to buy more. It's a cycle that costs you money, time, and energy every single season. And it never actually ends. But there are seeds you can scatter just once, and they will do everything mulch does. Suppress weeds, hold moisture, feed your soil, and then drop their own seeds so the whole cycle repeats without you lifting a finger. 6 of them. That's exactly what this video covers. Subscribe right now because this channel is where the kind of gardening information that actually changes your results' lives, and you do not want to be a season behind. And before we go further, drop a comment and tell me, have you ever deliberately grown a plant as a mulch crop? Because your answer might look very different by the time we hit number 1. Starting at number 6, and this is one of the most underestimated plants in the garden. Once you understand what it is actually doing, you will never see it as just a pretty annual again. Nasturtium is usually known as a cheerful, easy-to-grow plant with bright orange and yellow flowers. But underneath that color is a set of physical and chemical traits that make it one of the most useful self-mulching choices for a food garden. Begin with the physical side. Nasturtium has large, shield-shaped leaves. The botanical term is peltate. Those leaves sit flat, spread wide, and overlap each other across the soil. That canopy is extremely effective at catching rain. Instead of heavy rainfall striking bare soil and causing compaction or erosion, the nasturtium leaves intercept the water and slow it down. The soil beneath the nasturtium patch stays looser and better structured than exposed ground, even after a hard downpour. Here is the part most gardeners never hear. Nasturtium roots release glucosinolate compounds into the surrounding soil, the same family of compounds found in mustard plants. These compounds have a documented suppressive effect on certain soil-borne pathogens, including some fungal disease strains. So while the plant is physically covering your soil, it is also changing the soil chemistry in a way that helps protect nearby crops. Then there's the self-seeding. Nasturtiums produce large, wrinkled seeds that drop straight to the soil when the plant finishes flowering. Those seeds can overwinter in place and germinate the following spring. In mild climates, the plant may not fully die back at all. It can trail and sprawl year-round. Either way, you plant it once, and it handles much of its own replacement. For pest management, nasturtium works as a trap crop. Aphids are strongly drawn to it and often colonize it before they move on to your vegetables. Instead of spraying your food crops, you let the nasturtiums absorb the pressure, then trim or remove the infested section. The rest of the plant keeps growing. Scatter the seeds directly. Nasturtium dislikes root disturbance, so direct sowing is the right method. Press each seed about an inch into the soil and water it in. In warm conditions, those large seeds usually germinate within a week or 2. The whole plant is edible, leaves, flowers, and seeds. That means you are growing a mulch that can also feed you while it is protecting the bed beneath it. The peppery leaves and caper-like pickled seeds give this plant real value in the kitchen. Number 5 is one serious gardeners have quietly relied on for years, but very few people explain why it works the way it does. Creeping thyme is a woody perennial ground cover that stays low enough to walk across without being ruined. That alone separates it from most plants on this list. It is built to handle footsteps, and in many spots, it actually performs better because of that pressure. The mulching function comes from something many gardeners never think about. Creeping thyme produces volatile aromatic oils, mainly thymol and carvacrol, which are released from the leaves, especially when the plant is brushed, stepped on, or warmed by the sun. These compounds have documented allelopathic activity, meaning they can chemically inhibit weed seed germination in the soil around the plant. In other words, creeping thyme is releasing a low-level germination suppressant all day long. That is different from ordinary mulch. Bark chips and straw mostly block light. Creeping thyme helps block germination chemically while staying alive through the growing season. The soil beneath a mature creeping thyme mat is also noticeably different from bare soil or even straw-covered soil. Because the plant forms a dense, woody base, it moderates soil temperature, keeping the top layer cooler during heat and slightly warmer on cold nights. Moisture retention under established creeping thyme can compare with a 2-inch layer of wood chip mulch, except this effect is coming from a living plant that keeps renewing itself reliably. As older stems die and collect at the base, they create a slow-building layer of organic matter. That material breaks down gradually and adds carbon to the soil, much like wood chips do. The difference is that this carbon-building process is continuous, not something that depends on one mulch application from 6 months ago. Plant creeping thyme in full sun. It does not perform well in shade. When light is too low, the mat thins out, and the weed-suppressing density disappears. Space plants about 12 inches apart, and in good conditions, they can knit together into a solid carpet within one season. Once established, it is drought-tolerant, low-maintenance, and evergreen in mild climates. The surprising use case is between stepping stones or along garden pathways. You solve the compacted bare path problem, and the living mulch effect spreads outward toward the edges of your beds at the same time, season after season. One harvest note. Creeping thyme is related to culinary thyme. You can trim it as an herb while it is actively mulching your garden. Two functions from one plant, and that is exactly the kind of efficiency a self-managing garden is built on. Number 4 may surprise you because most gardeners plant it only for appearance. Sweet alyssum is that low, white-flowering plant often seen hugging the edges of garden beds. What many people miss is that under those tiny blooms, this plant is doing serious structural work. Here is what sweet alyssum actually does. It creates a dense horizontal mat that stays tight to the ground, close enough to block light from reaching weed seeds below it. Weed seeds need light to trigger germination, and sweet alyssum denies them that signal without you pulling anything. But the bigger reason it belongs here goes beyond weed suppression. Sweet alyssum is a powerful attractant for adult hoverflies, and it is the larvae of those hoverflies that move through your garden eating aphids, thrips, and other soft-bodied insects that would otherwise attack your crops. While the plant is covering the soil, it is also supporting pest control above the soil at the same time. Here is the rare part. When sweet alyssum dies back or gets cut, it breaks down extremely fast. The stem-to-leaf ratio is heavily weighted towards soft leaf material. That nitrogen-rich tissue decomposes in weeks and adds organic matter directly into the upper layer of your soil. That breakdown feeds earthworms and soil microbes while the next generation of seedlings is already coming through. Sweet alyssum self-seeds with almost no help from you. Scatter it once and it can return season after season, adjusting its own density depending on how much open space is available in the bed. To use it well, broadcast the seeds thickly along the front edges of your beds or anywhere there is bare soil between taller plants, which makes it especially useful near lettuce, peppers, and young seedlings. It will not seriously compete with established crops for root space. Its root system is shallow and fibrous, so it mostly stays in its own lane. Water it during germination, and after that, it largely manages itself. One thing worth knowing is that sweet alyssum performs best during the cooler parts of the growing season. In very hot weather, it may go dormant, but it often rebounds once temperatures drop again. In tropical and subtropical climates, plant it during the cooler, dry season for the strongest growth. At roughly 6 to 8 inches tall at its highest and spreading 9 to 12 inches across, this plant covers meaningful ground. Scale it across a full bed, and you get a living, breathing mulch layer that also happens to smell like honey. Number 3 is where the list moves into serious soil-building territory. Buckwheat is not a grass, and it is not related to wheat at all, despite the name. It is a broadleaf flowering plant, and for a home gardener, it may be the fastest self-mulching cover crop available. The number that matters with buckwheat is 6 weeks. From seed to full flowering cover, buckwheat can fill a bed in about 6 weeks. Very few garden plants move that quickly. In bare soil, especially in summer when there's a gap between crops, buckwheat closes that space before weeds can establish themselves. Its allelopathic effect is well documented. Buckwheat roots in decomposing residue release compounds, especially fagopyrin and rutin derivatives, that suppress the germination of many common weed species. Research has shown a significant reduction in weed emergence in soil where buckwheat has been grown and then cut down, even after the plant itself is gone. The chemical inhibition can outlast the living crop. When buckwheat is cut and left on the surface using the chop and drop method, it decomposes quickly. The carbon-to-nitrogen ratio of buckwheat residue sits around 20 to 1, close enough to the ideal range that it breaks down without locking up nitrogen the way woody mulches sometimes can. In warm conditions, a thick buckwheat mat can decompose within 3 to 4 weeks into a dark, crumbly layer resting on top of the soil. Earthworms move upward to feed on it. That is why buckwheat is so useful between heavy feeding crops. Instead of leaving a bed exposed while you wait for the next planting window, you can grow a temporary living cover that becomes the mulch for whatever follows. Buckwheat also has a specific advantage for phosphorus availability. Its roots release organic acids, mainly oxalic acid, that help solubilize phosphorus already present but locked in the soil. In gardens where phosphorus is there but unavailable, buckwheat acts like a biological key. It unlocks a nutrient other plants cannot easily reach on their own. After you chop it down, that released phosphorus remains available for the next crop planted into that bed. The pollinator value is just as important. Buckwheat flowers are small, white, and produced in dense clusters, and they are among the best documented bee attractors of any garden plant. A flowering buckwheat bed is constantly moving with pollinators. In a food garden, that movement matters because nearby cucumbers, squash, berries, and fruiting crops all benefit when more pollinating insects are pulled into the same growing space. Cut it before it fully sets seed if you do not want it spreading into places you did not choose, or let it self-seed in a dedicated area. Sow buckwheat thickly. Broadcast the seed and rake it in lightly. Dense coverage is the goal because thin sowing leaves gaps where weeds can compete. Used correctly, buckwheat is a complete soil reset in one 6-week cycle. Number 2 is a plant most gardeners have heard of only briefly, but very few have actually grown. That is a real missed opportunity because Phacelia may be the most well-rounded self-mulching plant in the garden. Phacelia looks dramatic before you even understand its function. The flowers form curled blue-purple spirals that open outward almost like unfurling ferns, and the whole plant has a fine, feathery texture. But its real value begins with timing. Phacelia germinates in cool soil. Soil temperatures as low as 41 degrees Fahrenheit or about 5 degrees Celsius can support it. That means you can establish it in late autumn, late winter, or early spring, precisely when many beds are empty and exposed. That window matters. Bare winter soil is vulnerable to rain compaction, nutrient leaching, and structural damage that can take years to repair. Phacelia covers that soil during the season when protection matters most. Its decomposition rate is one of the fastest of any green manure crop. The leaves are soft, highly cellular, low in cellulose, and rich in nitrogen. In warm soil, they can break down in under 3 weeks. Chop Phacelia down and lay it on the surface, and within a month, almost nothing visible remains. But the soil underneath has gained organic matter, and fungal activity rises in a way that benefits the next crop planted there, even in beds that looked completely tired before planting. Phacelia is also one of the strongest documented bee plants in agricultural research. Studies from multiple countries consistently rank it among the top plants for honeybee and bumblebee forage. The open flower structure makes nectar accessible to a wide range of species, including short-tongued bees that cannot reach deep tubular flowers. In a garden, that means stronger pollination around nearby beds, exactly where fruiting crops need that insect traffic most. Here is the less obvious advantage. Phacelia belongs to the borage family, not to the major crop families most home gardeners rotate through. It does not share diseases or pests with brassicas, legumes, nightshades, or cucurbits. That makes it a true neutral in crop rotation. You can use it as a gap filler between almost any crop group without worrying about disease carryover. Its root system is fibrous and extensive for the plant's size. When Phacelia is cut, those roots remain in the soil and decompose in place. They leave behind channels that improve drainage and aeration, which is especially valuable in heavy clay soil. The structure left after the roots break down mimics biological tillage without disturbing the surface. Scatter the seed thinly. Phacelia seeds are small and a little goes a long way. Rake them in lightly, keep the soil consistently moist during establishment, and once the plants are growing, they largely manage themselves from there. Number 1 is where we move from short-term cover crops into a true perennial living mulch. White clover is one of the most studied, most proven, and still most underused plants for home garden mulching. Most people already know the nitrogen story. White clover roots form a symbiotic relationship with rhizobium bacteria. Those bacteria colonize the roots, create nodules, and fix atmospheric nitrogen into a form plants can use. Estimates for a mature stand range from 100 to more than 200 pounds of nitrogen per acre per year. In a home garden, a well-established clover pathway or bed edge can supply a meaningful share of nearby plants' nitrogen needs with no fertilizer input. But that is only part of the reason it works. The real mulching story is its growth habit. White clover grows to about 4 to 8 inches tall, then stops pushing upward. Instead, it sends energy sideways through runners called stolons. Those runners creep across the surface, root at the nodes, and thicken into a living mat. A mature white clover stand becomes so dense that weed seeds landing on it have almost no bare soil to touch. They do not get the open germination surface they need. At the same time, the shallow root network holds the top layer of soil in place, preventing the surface erosion that can strip away topsoil after heavy rain. Moisture retention under white clover can compare with a 2 to 3 inch layer of straw mulch. The difference is that clover achieves that effect while it is alive and growing, not while it is breaking down. The canopy keeps the soil surface cooler and more consistently moist than bare ground, and often steadier than straw-covered soil under the same conditions. Its self-seeding capacity is also powerful. A single white clover plant can produce hundreds of seeds in a season, and it will colonize nearby bare soil without direction from you. In a self-mulching garden, that is not a problem. It is the feature. One pairing most gardeners never try is white clover as an understory for tall crops. Plant it between corn rows, between tomato cages, or around the base of fruit trees. The clover covers the soil those crops leave exposed, fixes nitrogen near their root zones, and pulls pollinators into the productive parts of the garden at the same time. It also tolerates occasional foot traffic, which makes it especially useful along bed edges and pathways where ordinary mulch gets scattered. Mow or trim it occasionally to keep it vigorous and encourage more lateral spread. The cut material falls back onto the surface as a light, nitrogen-rich mulch. Within days, it regrows from the base and keeps the cycle moving. 6 seeds. One garden that covers its own soil, feeds itself, supports its own pollinators, and keeps producing mulch season after season without you hauling another bag. What you have seen today is not a random collection of plant tips. It is a layered system. Nasturtiums fill open spaces between crops. Creeping thyme protects pathways and edges. Sweet alyssum works along bed fronts while bringing in hoverflies. Buckwheat resets empty beds between plantings. Phacelia covers vulnerable soil through the cooler months. White clover builds nitrogen along pathways, bed edges, and under taller crops. The average gardener spends real money every year on mulch that disappears by the next season. These 6 plants replace that cycle permanently. They cover the soil, suppress weeds, hold moisture, attract pollinators, reduce pest pressure, and build the kind of soil structure most gardens struggle to achieve even after years of effort. Start with 1. Add another the following season. Within 3 growing seasons, your garden can be handling a meaningful portion of its own maintenance without wasting another weekend spreading bagged mulch again, and you will see it in your yields, your darker soil color, and the health of every plant growing in it. Subscribe to Backyard Yield. This channel is where specific, actionable gardening information built on real plant science gets posted regularly. The gardener who learns this 3 seasons before everyone else is the one whose garden looks like it runs itself.